Welcome back to Opening Bell. While ransomware is not a new threat, according to data from NCC Group, attacks in the first half of the year have increased by 288%. That's more than 288%. Now, the president of Microsoft and co-author of Tools and Weapons, The Promise and the Peril of the Digital Age, is releasing a new paperback version of the New York Times bestseller. The update includes viewpoints on AI, digital sovereignty, and cybersecurity as it relates to the December SolarWinds attack. Our own Brad Smith is joined by another Brad Smith, except the second one is the president of Microsoft and the author of Tools and Weapons. Take it away.
You know what I like to say, Ken, what's better than one Brad Smith? Two Brad Smiths, of course. Well, it's great to be here. We have a treat here to kick off the unofficial start of fall. We're here with Brad Smith, who is the president of Microsoft. Brad, great to speak with you once again.
Nice to be here with you.
The last we talked, Tools and Weapons was coming out for its first iteration. There have been some rewrites, some tweaks, and now bringing it up to date with some of what we've all experienced of these past 12 to 18 months. What were some of the most critical things to readdress and to really kind of bring up to date with the book?
Well, what we did is we added new chapters to the book about cybersecurity and SolarWinds, focused on the changing international issues for tech, especially in Europe, focused on what the pandemic has meant for tech, and really rewrote what we had done before on social media, on China. It just shows how much these issues continue to change.
Right. You've wrote as well that when your technology changes the world, you bear responsibility to help address the world that you've helped create. Can you elaborate on what that looks like in practice for so many of the influential technology companies that are out there today?
Well, first of all, I think the first part of that is true. We've said it, technology has remade the world. Yeah. There's a lot of wonderful things that it has made possible, including the way we've all societally persisted through the pandemic. But privacy is more at risk. We face cybersecurity attacks literally from around the world. We face this fissure in our society. There are the people who have broadband and the people who don't. It's almost like some people live in the 2020s and others live in the 1990s. And so I think all of us who create this technology have to lean in. We have to do more to address these issues, and we have to recognize that governments are moving faster as they should, and we need to be supportive of that, I think.
With the acceleration, the reliance, and the technology that is embedded within so many key infrastructural systems that we have as well, we do know the Biden administration held a cybersecurity summit with top tech companies and their executives, including Microsoft as well. And Microsoft plans to quadruple cybersecurity plans, and those investments, $20 billion is the earmarked number over 5 years. What do you believe to be Microsoft's role in this kind of public-private sector overlap in ensuring that we're combating national cybersecurity threats and issues and vulnerabilities?
Well, I think we have one of the most important responsibilities in the tech sector, both because we make so many services that are fundamental to people's ability to rely on the cloud, and we are in the cybersecurity business. We provide the kinds of services that people use, say, to ensure the security of all their devices, whether it's an iPhone, an Android device, or a Windows laptop. So, we are really expanding our investment, our spending, our hiring in all of these spaces. But I think there's a whole lot more. Right. And that's what we really write about from the inside, say, perspective in the new chapter in our book. The way we see these threats evolving, the need that we have to share information with people in government, the need to foster information sharing across the economy, the need to actually skill a new generation of people. We have a real shortage in the cybersecurity workforce today. Yeah. We all need to come together to address it.
I want to talk about that upskilling in a moment, but I also want to talk about a piece that you co-authored in Fast Company, a piece on the insider perspective of Microsoft during the investigation of the SolarWinds hack, writing that the attack quickly became the broadest confirmed penetration of U.S. government and tech sector computer networks. Can you allow us to be a fly on the wall in the inner workings, the operations that were taking place in terms of how those thought processes were enacted and how we can learn from an event like that in order to mitigate future vulnerabilities and threats?
That investigation was really extraordinary. The whole case of this Russian penetration of so many networks was extraordinary. We moved more than 500 engineers from other work to focus on this in December of last year. And we tell the story in the book it was really like relying almost on a 21st century group of Sherlock Holmes detectives.
Wow.
Each day working with customers, working with the government, and working across Microsoft's network to identify the almost breadcrumbs in some cases that had to be followed, the kinds of techniques that were being used, and then really to have to verify everything and respond to them. And in some cases, especially with collaborative action with Microsoft, with FireEye, with SolarWinds, and others, we were able to move quickly to start to push these attackers out of these various networks.
Do you believe that there will be, kind of driven by some of these cybersecurity threats and events that have unfortunately taken place, a consortium of businesses, tech companies, or even cross-sector, similar to even the discussions that took place with the White House, that will continue to move forward and ensure that there is this information sharing, there's this knowledge sharing and skills sharing to make sure that we are actively monitoring, mitigating these threats, and then ultimately making sure that there is no presence of them in the future as well that continues to infiltrate some of these key systems?
I think the good news is that's the direction in which we're all heading. I think that these events have brought the tech sector closer together. I think the meeting at the White House last month was a real watershed. Because it brought together not just tech leaders, but insurance and energy and financial service executives and people from, say, community colleges and skilling nonprofits. You need to bring every part of society together. I give huge credit to the White House for the steps it is taking, including, frankly, pushing us and others in tech. I think we'll need more action in Congress. I do think there's a need for new legislation that will both encourage and to some degree protect the entities that are attacked and share information about those attacks. Because as long as this kind of data sits in different silos, we're going to fail societally to see the whole picture.
How do you envision that, should Congress take additional action to ensure that we are implementing the necessary steps, that other tech companies will respond to that, knowing that there could be an impact to their material revenue, their bottom lines at the end of the day? How do you imagine that that will also kind of move the dialogue and the conversation, but ultimately that we get towards the best resolution that protects both individual consumers and businesses and government systems at large too?
I think it really requires a thoughtful approach. I mean, it's one of the things we talk about in the new book. The hearing before the Senate Intelligence Committee in January, I think we need laws that do mandate that certain companies report certain kinds of incidents. I think those of us in the tech sector have the greatest responsibility and should, under the law, for that kind of reporting. I think one that needs to be very careful, because not all reports should necessarily be to the world. You don't necessarily want to let the attackers know they've been identified. You certainly don't want to disclose sources and methods to them. But I actually think we would benefit if there is some consolidated reporting to a part of the government that will then protect the privacy of individuals along the way.
Let's talk more about those individuals too. What practices can end consumers implement and adopt to ensure protection from some of the ransomware attacks, some of the cybersecurity threats that are out there?
Well, I think there's three things that every consumer should think about. First, is your software up to date? It's generally available today free of charge to continue to update your software. Second, do you have antivirus software installed and up to date as well? If you have a product like Windows, you can either use what we provide or you can purchase another service. If you purchase another service and it expires, we'll notify you, but make sure you have it on. And finally, use what's called multi-factor authentication. You may look at this and say, what is this? Oh, this is a pain. It is the best single thing you can do to protect yourself. So what it means is if you sign into your email, you may have to write in your password and then authenticate it on your phone. Do that, because if your password is stolen, the attacker still won't have access to your phone. Your email will be much better protected.
I have to go rapid fire here. So first and foremost, I have to ask back to the upskilling question and making sure that we've got the necessary talent that is out there to meet this demand that is in the market right now. How significant is upskilling or reskilling for the future of work as you see it right now?
Well, both nationally and globally, we have a shortage of cybersecurity professionals. It's an urgent problem we need to address. The good news is people don't need to go get a new 4-year college degree. Our community colleges, nonprofits, all have a vital role to play. at a company like Microsoft with LinkedIn, online learning can plug a lot of the holes that currently exist. But I think we all need to lean in. I think employers need to lean in. We need to really invest in addressing this problem.
And then just lastly, while we have you here, and I'm going to make one of our producers very upset, but I have to ask this, in terms of the number of individual consumer products that Microsoft does have as well at the end of the day, products that are in people's homes, in their hands as they're walking around and engaging with the world around them as well. The outlook on the chip sector and how that's potentially impacting some of those very products as you're road mapping, not just through the end of this year, but even into next year.
Well, I think we look at everything from a long-term perspective. The reason there is a shortage of chips in the world today in many ways is because of this explosion in demand. Because it's not just your Xbox, your PC, your phone, it's your refrigerator, your thermostat, your automobile. And we're going to see a continuing growth in this demand for chips. Supply is catching up, but this isn't an issue that's going to be an aspect of the past in a few months. I think this is an issue for the decade ahead, and it's going to require that we in the tech sector and others and even governments focus on what will it take to create a sustainable supply that can keep pace with growing demand.
Absolutely. Brad, always a pleasure to connect and speak with you, and thanks so much for joining us here today on Cheddar.
My pleasure, Brad, as well. Thank you.
Absolutely. Ken, I'll toss things back on over to you in the studio.
I love the Xbox reference. Brad Smith, president of Microsoft and co-author of Tools and Weapons.